Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Leah, and good morning to everyone. I see some faces. I see Rissa and Helen and Catherine and Danny, and welcome. I see Savita and Jennifer and Kimberly and Melanie and Olivia and a lot more people, and I'm sure others will be joining us as we move along this morning. So before we start, I will share my screen, and Leah just put the link to the handout, the slide deck, and some additional handouts in the chat box so that you could access those and download them for later reading at your when time permits for you. All right, great. So you should all be able to see my screen now. So we're going to jump right in. This is kind of part 2 where we're taking a deeper dive. I believe it was over a year ago, Leah, we did part 1 of challenging behavior. That recording is on the First 5 Alameda County's YouTube page. So if you haven't, we encourage you to go back and view that when you have some time. And you don't have to sit and view it all in one time. I oftentimes encourage people to view it in 15-minute increments or each time a topic changes so that they can reflect on it and digest it over time in small bites instead of one huge kind of chunk. All right. So today we're going to take one deep dive because there are many deep dives that we could take, but based on the evaluation data, people wanted more about this, as always. So we're calling this Behaviors That Challenge, examining play challenges. So we're really taking a spotlight focus on some play challenges that often persist for young children in early learning settings and in their homes. All right, I'm waiting for that MacBook rainbow spiral to move the screen, see what happens. Yeah, it's weird. So for those who don't know, I see a lot of familiar names here today, so welcome. But for those who don't know, I'm Shawn Bryant. I'm going to be your facilitator on this learning journey. Just a little bit about me. I'm the director and principal consultant for YesToECE, training, coaching, and consultancy that is mine, formerly the Teaching Excellence Center. I changed the name. My other big role is I'm director of professional development for the Child Lab at Yale University's Child Study Center. Basically, all that means is we've created a tool where we train early childhood mental health consultants to go into early learning settings to assess climate, but we also train coaches and researchers and evaluators, anyone that kind of goes into early learning settings. We have like 9 dimensions that we look at across the early learning setting. So I spend a lot of my time developing the tool, refining it, looking at equity, and spending time across the country with lots of early childhood mental health consultants and coaches. This is my 30th year in early childhood education. And as the screen says, I continue to do this work to support adults who work in a variety of places to help young children learn, grow, and hopefully to thrive. Because I earnestly believe and stand on, after 30 years, the foundation that when we afford young children opportunities from the inside out, it's one of the main ways that we all grow up and actualize this notion of becoming positive, productive citizens. So just a little bit about me, right there. And of course, you can see there are some social media handles on this slide. You're always welcome to join me there. It's a slow process. We're redoing the website. I've been doing all of this content creation on the weekends with young people. And I'm excited for what they're putting together for a middle-aged man like myself. So our flow of experience today, we're really going to look at 5 particular behaviors that cause challenges. So we're going to start with this notion of children dabbling in early learning settings or at home, and then children who kind of wander and roam. Then we're going to look at children who develop anxiety on the small end without us really going to the big end and pathologizing. We're going to look at children in early learning spaces who become detached. And then we're going to follow up the fifth one with children who are rejected in early learning spaces and how all five of these kind of create what we often call challenging behaviors. So what we want to do in this deep dive is roll back before the challenging behavior shows up, paying attention to all behaviors, but these five, because they actually oftentimes turn into or grow into what we often call challenging behaviors. And we're going to end our time together, our short learning experience, with juxtaposing tantrums and meltdowns and how they're alike, but how they're different, and what we can do as adults who support other adults, who work directly with children, who work with parents and families and communities on knowing the difference before we label challenging behavior. So this learning process, we're going to raise awareness about these five challenges with a focus on sensory learning. You're going to learn some new skills. I want to encourage you to get something to write with, but not to write down what I'm saying. I want to encourage you not to write down what I'm saying, because you have the slide decks for that. And I purposely design my slide decks with the information on it so that you can read it later. Even though if you go to a presentation training, they often tell you, don't put those things on the slide, make them pay attention. I think it distracts us though. I really think it distracts us. And a lot of the people who design it that way, I see a lot of trainers on the call, they design it that way because they want you to purchase something. And that's never my desire. My desire is for you to get the most out of our short time together. So when you grab something to write with, since you're not writing down what I say, I want you to write down and catch and scribe what memory or thought happens when you hear something. Because what we know is if you write down what memory was attached or what thought was attached or even a feeling to what you heard, it's easier to integrate it, and then it's easier to remember it and build on it, opposed to trying to remember what Shawn said. That's not necessary because you can always go back to the recording and look at that over and over and over. And our last consideration in this learning experience is we're going to go into some breakout rooms. And for those who don't have your cameras on, we're going to ask you for issues of equity when you go into those breakout spaces to then turn your camera and audio on so that you can be an active participant. And fifth, again, Leah has placed the link to the slide deck in the handouts in your in the chat space. All right. So I'd like to honor folk who are here. So if those who don't have your cameras on, you might not be able to play and you might not win. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to do a fun activity. So the first person who can cut their camera on and show us that you have 2 cell phones, pepper spray, a parking ticket, some medicine, and something that makes you happy, we want you to unmute and show those to us. The first person who has all 5 of these, 2 cell phones, pepper spray, a parking ticket, medicine, and something that makes you happy. Unmute and then share those with us.
Hi, my name is Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Did I win? Okay, so this is my wallet, and this is something that makes me happy. I don't know if you can see.
We see your picture of your family, so that's one. Where's your medicine, the parking ticket, the pepper spray, and the 2 cell phones?
1 second.
Krista said 1 cell phone is enough. So we need all 5 or 4 or 3, whoever has the most. Not so Helen has 1. She said, I got something that makes me happy, a photo of my family. Can anyone else top that?
No parking tickets.
No parking ticket, right?
No pepper spray. I have only 1 cell phone.
1 cell phone. Okay, so she has something that makes her happy. Can someone else get 2 of these things? They're hard, right? So this group all has 1 cell phone. You all are abiding by the law, so none of you have pepper spray. It's my friends down in Texas that have pepper spray. Danny has 2 things. Okay, I see some medicine And something that makes Diney happy. All right.
It's my tea.
Tea. Okay. We got 2. Can we get 3? Does anyone? Granny. Ronnie.
So I have pepper spray here. And then I have 2 phones, one from my work phone and one from myself, right here.
Okay.
And then what else? And I have my medicine. I always take vitamin C.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
good. Parking ticket is something that makes you happy.
Something that makes me happy. Is it okay for pictures?
Whatever makes you happy. It's your happiness.
My car.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Like this, I'm an adventurer, so I always take my car to road trip and adventures.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So you got 4 out of the 5, and that's great. You don't have a parking ticket.
Thank you.
So let's give Randy a hand. 4 out of the 5. Congratulations. Congratulations. So you actually win the $25 Amazon gift card, Randy. So I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Email, and at the end of the session, you will get an email. Once you email me, and it'll be an electronic Amazon gift card for $25. Congratulations. Yay. All right, let's jump in. So this notion of a play challenge, we look to Ariel Cross for her definition that's on the screen. I'll give you an opportunity to read that. So some considerations for this definition. We need to understand that a play challenge is observed over a consistent period of time. So we often say, if we're a parent or a guardian or family member in our home, a play challenge that persists is one we're going to see probably for a good 5 weeks consistently. It oftentimes happens sometimes throughout the same interactions. It could be during meal times, during nap time, during transitions, leaving the house to go catch the bus to school or some other place. In early learning settings, we usually say it happens in the course of a month for 21 consecutive days. But for young children, we typically add another week the younger they are. Meaning if I came to school or the program Monday through Friday for the entire month of March, and you saw a different behavior, we could classify that as a play challenge in terms of defining it, meaning we've observed, we've seen it over and over and over, meaning we documented it in some concrete way so that we're not pulling from a false memory. I remember I was in the Bay Area and I was coaching a teacher, or 2 teachers, and it was February, and one of the teachers was talking about a little boy who kicked her. So, you know, I'm listening, and the other teacher realized that I thought he had literally just kicked her like that week. And she stopped the other teacher and she said, wait a minute. She said, he kicked you in September. And I kind of laughed because the way she was recalling the story as if it had just happened. So we need to document to make sure we're not calling an old memory or a false memory as if it had just happened to us as adults. We also kind of consider when young children demonstrate behaviors that challenge, we call those play challenges. So we're trying to move away from this challenging behavior, which puts it all on the child. But when something is a play challenge, that demands that the adult or adults have an active role in what lessening and mitigating those kind of play challenges that percolate up. So that frame demands that we enter into it differently. And we need to understand that. And when we do that, we help children develop what we like to call a healthy concept of play. I like to say that, you know, play, it is a 4-letter word, and some of us think it's a dirty word, but I think it's that 4-letter word that's not a dirty word like other 4-letter words. And it's one of the greatest gifts that we can offer a child or children who share time and space with us. It's one of the greatest gifts. So let's look at some quick ways that we can help young children become successful at play before we take that deep dive. So some signs, and this list is not fully exhaustive of everything, but just some of the ones that kind of percolate up. Some big signs, some spotlights of healthy play behaviors include young children. We're talking about children typically 5 and under or 6 and under. Or if we think of the whole early childhood span, we'll say ages 8 and under. This notion of turn taking and communicating when children are in spaces with other children and they recognize that they've been overlooked. And we're really paying attention to how children are with other children opposed to how they are with adults. Because children who only spend time with adults typically develop a different set of skills opposed to children who are spending time with their peers and of course with adults who keep them safe and healthy. Children who are engaged in play for sustained periods of time and they're not wandering around. They're engaged in play. They're able to lock on and anchor themselves. These are all healthy signs. Children who are excited to be with other children their age. Children who are happy to join play experiences and engage with other children. And this other one that I really am taking a deep dive in personally, this notion of children who can cooperate and they know how to interplay experiences with role play and pretend play, those social dramatic play experiences. How are they showing up in the lives of young children? So those are just some ways that we can look for healthy play behaviors that we know we want to sustain. And those children typically don't demonstrate ongoing and persistent play challenges. So no matter the type of play, we're finding out that too many young children in this country struggle with issues of discipline, guidance, learning, specifically around social interaction struggles that we find in play challenges. And left to their own devices, these play challenges grow in capacity and they create other challenges for that child, the children around them, and the adults who care and educate them. But we can support play challenges early on, and we see the 5 on the screen. One of the main strategies that we need to reframe and rethink is seeing ourselves as early interventionists. I'll say that again. Seeing ourselves, regardless of our title, as parent, as caregiver, as grandparent, as librarian, as bus driver, as paraprofessional, as lead teacher, as social worker, as counselor, as program director, whoever we are, as neighbor, if we see ourselves as an early interventionist regarding play challenges, that intervention becomes the sweet spot in the strategy around supporting children and reducing and eliminating challenging behaviors. So this intervention that we're talking about, we start with us on the inside and we move to the outside. It's our own initiation, our own action, right? To address a child's play challenge by helping them to improve their play performance across the developmental areas. That's essentially our role. And when we surrender that role is when we oftentimes end up in spaces with young children that we deem challenging. To say it another way that I think is easier to remember, the research says, and this is old research that keeps getting reconfirmed, that we're only, and those of you who are parents, don't feel disappointed because there's some other stuff that you need to hold on to. Because parents often say, what? I devote all my time and attention to these children. The research says that we are only, and she has 2 young children, so I know she's listening to this part. We're only in sync with our child or children 20 to 30% of the time. I'll say it again. As a teacher, you're only in sync with that child 20 to 30% of the time. The other 70 to 80% of the time, we're choosing to do 2 things as adults, as interventionists. The other time, we're working 70 to 80%, we are actively working to get back in sync with the child who roams, the anxious child, the rejected child, the child who kind of dabbles, and the detached child. The list goes on and on. We're working to get back in sync with them. That is the work. But then some of us as adults say, I'm not putting in the effort. I was in sync 20 to 30% of the time. This child needs to change who they are, unfortunately. So what we're saying is the play challenge has an opportunity to grow because we're not working as an interventionist to get back in sync with the child or children. That is the work. And through multiple experiences, I know that it does work either way. The times when I didn't work to get back in sync with the child or children, it grew and it magnified and created other challenges for me. The times that I took 10 minutes to get back in sync with the child or children, they were able to get back into what I like to call a hum in rhythm, in a rhythm that worked for them, a rhythm that worked for me, and definitely if there were other children around, a rhythm that worked for other children. So this notion of a play challenge was what? Eliminated and reduced. We all have the job of being an interventionist. So let's look at this children who dabble. So we define this notion of dabbling as children who kind of work or involve themselves superficially on the surface level. Learning, experiences, socialization, nothing goes beyond the superficial for children who dabble. All children actually dabble at some point or another. They do. All children dabble at some point or another. Some curricular approaches say, you know what, we actually have it embedded. If you are familiar with tools of the mind, they actually have it embedded in their curricula, which is really a Vygotskian approach. They create something called a play plan. So every Monday, children have a plan of what they plan to do. So they're going to write a picture, they're going to use invented spelling, and they'll say, I'm going to the book area and I'm going to read A Snowy Day. I'm going to the art area and I'm going to paint a picture of my abuelita because it's her birthday. I'm going to the house area. They do this every week. So they have a play plan that is designed to help them what? Not dabble. But because all children do dabble, if an adult notices a child who's dabbling in those environments, the adult often walks over and says, hey, Shawn, what's your plan? Some of you heard me say, I've used this and I've never heard a child tell me, my plan is to go push Catherine down. My plan is to go pull Rissa's hair. My plan is to go kick Kelvin. I've never heard a child do that. So this notion of a plan is one thing that we know helps children move away from dabbling because they all do it. It becomes problematic when the dabbling becomes excessive, because excessive dabbling for young children will not and does not support their development and their learning. It actually becomes the cause of many problems related to social interaction and learning. Social interaction and learning. So let me introduce you all to Jose. Jose is a 5-year-old. His teacher has set up in their early learning setting an expansive exploratory center. Jose and 3 other children enter the play space. The other children engage immediately. Jose has little interest. Jose stands near, he picks up a material or two, and then he drops it. Jose is 5. Jose looks around without regard to other children or the materials. Jose's attitude towards exploratory play is unmotivated and unfocused. It's unmotivated and unfocused. Here's some things we know. So pay attention to that scenario. If Jose demonstrates what we call dabbling play behavior over time through our observations, we probably will notice irregular play from Jose without any active engagement. You're going to notice Jose's play is oftentimes, he plays with little or no intrinsic motivation. So it's not coming from within him, it's what the adult might offer to him. We might notice Jose is refusing to attempt any new things in play. You're probably going to notice Jose is unconnected during play. So imagine Jose has some Play-Doh. Instead of making something with the Play-Doh, it has a means to an end. I'm going to make a snowman. I'm going to make a Play-Doh car or whatever, we might just notice Jose is poking the Play-Doh repeatedly. You're going to notice Jose is oftentimes indifferent to play activities and materials. You might also know that Jose is unaware of how to initiate or interplay, even at 5, because we often skip teaching children appropriate entry and exit play behaviors. So hold on to that scenario around meeting Jose and that little bit we were just told about Jose, who's a dabbler. So what we want to do now is we're going to go into our first breakout space to discuss Jose the dabbler. So you're going to discuss with your team, it's going to be 4 people in each breakout space. You're going to discuss how you can support and encourage Jose, how you could support and encourage Jose. Leah, I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout spaces. I was saying, I was in room 7, so why don't we hear from another room, somebody who wants to unmute and share with all of us what you and your group talked about around supporting Jose as a dabbler. How might you support Jose? Remember, there are no right or wrong answers here. We're all learning together.
I think mine was room 4. Danny.
Okay.
Danny said something beautiful. She would get to his level, go on one knee, physically try to make eye contact with him and try to see things through his eyes and understand why he was doing what he was doing. It's kind of similar with the strategies I've been learning about how to understand that children don't come to torture you every day, even though that seems like what it is they wake up every day for, just torture and terrorize. But no, there's different things that children experience that they can't articulate. So we need to come to their level to try to understand what exactly is going on, what they really need. And if that need can be addressed, then that's the first step to the journey to helping Jose and any other child like him.
Thank you, Helen. Awesome. Definitely. We know that across children, across cultures, across gender, any ism that we might want to list, we know that neuroscience says that the first thing we need to have all children and adults experience is that we all feel seen. And then once we feel seen, we experience safety. Once we experience safety, then we can experience feeling soothed. And we're going to talk about that using another word. And then those 3 are the anchors to helping all children feel secure. So Dan Siegel calls them the 4 S's. This notion of being seen, we cannot leap over and ignore. So thank you, Helen and Danny in your group. That's definitely a global strategy across any child in any behavior across the continuum that we definitely want to demonstrate. So let's look at some reasons that children may dabble in early learning settings. They may just simply be immature. It could be my age, it could be my lack of experience, or it could be I have a what? Undiagnosed or diagnosed delay. Remember, delays aren't permanent. You can help me to catch back up. It's not the same as a disabling condition. I just might not know. Maybe it's my first week or 2 in this preschool and I spent all my time before that with my 9 and oops, thank you, Leah. I'm not sharing my screen again. This is when takes me to the breakout room, I forget. Sorry about that, everyone. I may just be unaware of the rules associated with what? Gaining play entry skills or this play situation, so I dabble. And then this notion of my motivation, we call it intrinsic motivation because it comes from within. It comes from within. The part for us to understand is that different things motivate different children. So we can't have, these are the 2 things I do to motivate children. For any length of time, you're going to know that what? what worked for that group may not work for children in this group. So we've got to keep filling our toolbox, and not just filling our toolbox, but getting to know children as individuals. That's a huge, huge strategy that we use. Then this other one, I'm not sure I appreciate the word passive, but I'm using some research-based terms here. Passive personality traits. Now we know that the child's personality evolves through ongoing and continuous attempts for young children to kind of satisfy or satiate those physical and emotional needs that happen during daily routines and experiences, okay? This is why it's so crucial for young children to play and interact with others as part of, I like to say, the cure, part of the elixir. Children might dabble because they have limits in their motor development. So motor planning is basically a fancy way of saying doing physical things in a sequence. So if I were to say, okay, everyone stand up, we're all going to jump twice. So we would all know to jump, we typically would put our feet close together, bend our knees a little, then I would say jump, and we would move forward or move back. But children who actually have limits in motor planning, not just in their feet or knees, but it could be in their hands, their trunk, of different parts of their body, they oftentimes might dabble and not sustain play. One other that we notice says children can get stuck in play, meaning they need assistance. They need the teacher to be an active facilitator in the beginning because they may not know what else to do or where to go. So let's talk about how we can help a child who is stuck. We've got to consider, just like Helen said, getting down on the child's level. And are we using all available play possibilities, or are we using the one that we're used to? Which is why I actually don't encourage a lot of times when children are needing adult assistance for us to always jump in and do it, opposed to asking some curious questions and definitely following what children say or do to gain more information before we start doing that. What are all the play possibilities? I'm thinking of a teacher, Esther, down in San Jose. So she was in one side of the room and she heard some voices go up. There were some boys who were, they had some blocks and some ramps and some cars, and she heard the voices escalate. So she told the children who she was with, I'll be right back. Let me go check on our friends over here. And she got up and moved her body. And the first thing she said was, what's happening? I heard some loud voices. What's happening? She didn't say, what do you need me to do? She asked for explanation, and they started talking. And guess what she did? She said, well, how else could we get the cars to move fast? What else could we do? The boys had to think about other play possibilities for them to get unstuck. She didn't tell them what to do. She asked them for other possibilities. Another time young children get stuck is when they're simply no longer engaged in the activity. And what I often see, and this is a cross-program type, children are no longer engaged in something because it's quite boring, but the adult wants to push it. The child is stuck and the adult doesn't know it, and they're forcing them. Guess what happens? A power struggle between the child and the adult. So pay attention to children who are here, because this is a clear sign that this child is a dabbler. They don't want to focus on what they're engaged in. They focus on the end. So a child who's recently started playing with something might start saying, let's clean up. You sit down to play with them, and before you actually can play, they're running to the end of the activity, which is clean up. You haven't even been there for 2 minutes, and they're saying, let's clean up and put it back. And you might notice these children do a lot of that. They'll go actually get things, but they can't anchor themselves. Children who are initially playful then become rigid and hard in the play. It's often a sign that they were stuck and didn't know what else to do and don't know how to ask for help. And this fifth one is, dabblers oftentimes show up in early learning spaces and their play is restrained and it's not what we like to say free. So think of free play. meaning I get to choose, make choices, make decisions. It's not directed by an adult. So we often see children who are stuck become really reserved and restrained, in the play isn't free. But remember, we're early interventionists. So there are some things that we all can do as early interventionists. So we can enhance play materials. So what we mean by that is one material can take on what? Many different directions. One material can be used many different ways. So what we have to do is watch our language and say, you know, Shawn, we don't use the blocks that way. If it's not dangerous, if I'm not hurting myself or others, maybe I've developed some creativity and I'm using the material in the way that your adult mind never thought of. So what else could we add to enhance the play materials? Think about changing our environment and rotating materials. I was in San Rafael, and it was April of the school year. So it was in a 4-year-old class, meaning all the children in the class were going to kindergarten that fall. And the teacher, they had broken the kids up into small groups. So she had 8 kids and they were seated inside. And out of the 8 kids, there were 8 male-born children in her small group. And there were all of these puzzles, but all the puzzles were really toddler puzzles. And I had already queried her saying, hey, these puzzles are really for much younger age children. And, you know, she gave me her justification that some of the children weren't there. And I said, but there are like 10 puzzles here and they're all like toddler puzzles. There's not even what I would consider a preschool puzzle. Because she refused to change the environment and change out those materials, guess what happened? While I was there on the observation, one kid decided to snatch a puzzle piece from another kid because he was bored and he wanted to dabble, and it created this big problem. And the problem ensued for a good 12 minutes. So our environment, we got to be interventionists and know that even the environment and materials can force children into dabbling. Children who dabble can sometimes benefit from a play buddy, a child who doesn't dabble, a child who has the experience, a child who wants me to be with them, to share with me what's going on. They oftentimes become my anchor if I'm a dabbler. We need to make sure our environment is orderly and that it is non-competitive. Because oftentimes if the environment is competitive and we're pitting children against each other in ways that we don't even recognize as competitive, children back away, okay? And this final point, which is really one of the first points, you've got to know me as a dabbler. What are my interests? What are my styles and modes? Do I prefer to be with the adult and 2 other children? Or am I okay with 5 or 6 children in the house area, in the dramatic play space? Or is that overwhelming to me? So I end up dabbling. Locate what I do well, my strengths, and then we build on that. So the final point of consideration for dabblers is for us to think about sensory integration strategies. And when we're thinking of sensory integration strategies here, oftentimes in early learning settings, we think of sand, water, clay, and paint, us touching it. But think of sensory integration as something much larger, that we're not thinking of just 5 senses, we're thinking of 8 senses. And then depending on what you read, there are some things that say there are 9 senses. And think of how many senses could we get to work together to help children who dabble. So just some, and remember, this isn't an exhaustive list. We find that if we can prompt the play, so we're going back to what Helen and Danny said. So part of this is being with children and sitting with children, not saying do this, but being a part of it so that we can anchor them securely away from dabbling, so that we can prompt the play by asking some open-ended questions. And we know that open-ended questions have multiple responses compared to closed-ended questions have what? One response. It's one answer. I either know the answer or I don't. So sitting with children is actually a sensory integration strategy. Did you know that? Like your body, your physical body can help anchor a child. Some children want to sit closer to you. Some children want to sit directly in front of you and look you dead in your face, but your body can help prompt the play. Use nature. Don't just go outside for the sake of going outside, because here's what we know. Children who spend ample amounts of time in nature, meaning they see blue skies, green grass, or brown trees and things in nature, they actually regulate better. Okay? So use nature as a sensory integration strategy. Children who actually have multiple experiences, long periods of uninterrupted time to see the blue sky, the green grass, and the brown trees in nature, the green, brown, and blue, nature-based colors actually do well. And this is researched. And that's a sensory-based experience. Oops. This notion of making and using music. How often can you integrate your body with the music, not just listening to music in the background? Some of you who've been in ECE for years, remember when we only had Itters and Ectors and we were told to, like have music playing in the background during free play time, and everyone pretty much knew it was causing more chaos, but to get a higher score, you had to have the music playing to get a higher score. So we all did it because it was always attached to money, but we intuitively knew this is problematic. It didn't have a real reason to be in some of our environments. So if we actually have time that is meaningful, that we play music and we move our bodies to the different beats and sounds and have children create those, it's a way for me to what? Anchor a child who dabbles, because the more I'm anchored and I sustain myself in play-based behaviors, I'm moving away from that familiar habit of dabbling. But then this next one is play materials, right? Play materials. Adding materials are what we call 3 units of play. So 3 units of play are basically the research finds, and this is Montessori research also, in Elizabeth Jones, Betty Jones. It's a little pamphlet book that I don't even think you can buy anymore. I have it as a PDF. So if anyone wants it, just email me and I'll email it to you. But in Betty Jones's stuff, in Elizabeth Jones's research, she talks about 3 units of play help children sustain play and create what we call flow, okay? Meaning, if I have just the blocks, I may not sustain my play long. But if in having the blocks, you add somewhat zoo or farm animals and some magnetiles, I can become more creative in my play with those 3 units of play. So the blocks are 1 unit of play. The farm animals or the zoo animals are a 2nd unit of play. The 3rd unit of play would be considered the magnetiles or whatever else I bring into the play that creates what? My creativity and my sustainability in engaging in the play. Sensory intervention. The other one is play partners. Think of this as hands-on experiences with play partners. So we're not just sitting and reading a book. We're deciding to do things together. We're moving our bodies in space and time with my partner. And this last one comes from Ariel Cross, where she calls it the please see me. This is all areas of development. So the P stands for physical, the L stands for language, the E emotional, the A adaptive, the S social, the C cognitive, and then the M is for motor. And of course that E, think of Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, that we all are very intelligent, not smart, in a variety of ways to support and help dabblers. Questions, clarity, considerations? All right. Children who roam. So children who roam are children who move from place to place without direction or purpose. They're wanderers. Okay? Some people confuse the roamers with dabblers. Dabblers are actually what? I'm picking up the sand, I scoop the sand. I really didn't pay attention to the children who were there because they were actually trying to build something with some water in the sandbox. I'm a wanderer, I'm picking it up and letting it go. Roamers, I'm just moving from place to place without any direction or no purpose. Let's meet Jamal. Jamal is 3.5 years old. He attends a local socialization group with his father and mother. Sometimes his grandmother attends. Socialization is underway at the Family Resource Center. During snack time, children sit down and begin to make their own snacks. 2 minutes after sitting, Jamal is up out of his chair. he begins to roam the playroom. He's quiet and tentative. He touches everything unobtrusively, but he hums and he makes clicking sounds with his tongue. This is Jamal at socialization. So if Jamal were to demonstrate the following play behaviors persistently, we would need to what? Pay very close attention. If we notice Jamal spends a lot of time wandering aimlessly around the room every time he comes, if Jamal is consistently uninvolved with peers or materials, remember, this is over what? A period of 4 to 5 weeks that we're seeing this repeated behavior, and we're documenting it somewhere so that if we need to have this conversation with another professional or the parent or family, we're not calling it all from memory. All right. We notice that Jamal kind of meanders on the edge of play. He does a lot of watching. We notice that Jamal moves from play areas or materials to another play area or material, and a lot of what? Watching. Jamal sometimes might drift around the socialization room, touching and looking at things over and over. Jamal is a roamer. Jamal is a roamer. So we're going to go back into some breakout rooms. So we're going to discuss how we might support and encourage Jamal, how we might support and encourage Jamal. All right, welcome back. So we talked about roaming Jamal, Jamal who roams, he roams. Anyone want to unmute and share what someone in your groups talked about, how you might support and encourage Jamal quickly?
Okay, in our group, this is Orlando Johnson.
Hey, Orlando.
And in our group, we discussed that since we've seen the symptoms going on for like more than 2 or 3 weeks, we would recommend a parent go get him some professional help or some services, see if he's autistic or if he has any type of mental disorder that we can help solve. And then secondly, what we do, we just encourage his behavior, see that he might be an Einstein. He might be curious to do things. So we're just finding out creative ways that we can support the parent, because the 4 or 5 hours that they're not with the parents, we can help support them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that Einstein one, you know, seeing them through a different lens that, you know, maybe this is a child with very high exceptional ability that we oftentimes overlook. So here's some reasons. I'm gonna speed up just a little bit so that we get through all 5 successfully. Some reasons children roam. It could be a developmental delay that causes what? Children to be frustrated, and they oftentimes find difficulty in playing. They could simply be unsure of what to do. They could simply be unsure of what to do, right? They might not want to play with what's available. Oftentimes when children go to preschool, the toys there don't look like, don't sound like, don't work like the toys that they have at home. And we have to acknowledge that, right? That Jamal might be stuck and unable to get started with play entry, right? How does he know what to do and how to do it? He may not understand what we call the null aspects or the hidden parts of play and engagement. These are the unspoken rules that oftentimes the adults know. They sometimes are cultural, you know, they're sometimes indicative of a specific program. How do we know that Jamal knows that? How has it explicitly been taught to him over and over and over? So we need to investigate that to help remedy Jamal's roaming, right? Jamal simply might lack a little confidence and motivation in the socialization. He might say, woo, I see some familiar people, but socialization is different. Sometimes it is the same parents and children, sometimes it isn't, if it's more of a drop in socialization. All of that could be adding to Jamal's roaming. So we want to work on our intervention plan first and foremost. So here are just some simple things that we can do. Making sure that our what? Experiences for Jamal are developmentally appropriate. This considers his chronological age. So we said Jamal was what? 3.5, right? Jamal was 3.5. So making sure that what's available isn't for a 2-year-old, or maybe it's not for a 5-year-old. His chronological age. And what's his developmental age? His developmental age across areas may not be 3.5. It may be 4, as Orlando said, in some areas, or 4.5 in some areas. And in other areas, it might be 2.9. It's important for us to know that and for parents and families to understand what that is. Jamal might need some help in choice making, some help in how do I make a choice and stick with it? You know, he might need some pictures to guide the choice making. He might need us to help him, a variety of strategies. He may need us to actually show up and help him sustain the play. I often find in my observations when adults show up with children, anchor them, engage in the play, not as a leader, but as a participant, children stick with it longer. So when the adult then says, I need to go check on some other friends, the children continue, all right? Jamal might need to focus in an area that doesn't have a lot of distractions to help him stop roaming. Physical boundaries. We can be a boundary, not in a very restrictive way, but again, our bodies can act as a boundary when we're engaging with children who roam on their level. Jamal definitely could benefit from some prompts during play, or me modeling how to interplay, how to select the play material or toy, how to play with it, and then how to put it back. He might need the beginning, the middle, and the end as anchors. And again, as I shared earlier, making sure that what's available isn't too easy or too difficult, because we find that children who roam, the materials and equipment are often too difficult beyond them, that they need an adult to help them repeatedly, or it's too easy, they've already mastered it, and they're bored by it. And of course, we think of sensory integration strategies. What are my expectations? Am I clear? Am I concise? And am I consistent? These are big, because when I was in a self-contained classroom and I taught, I've always spoken fast, but sometimes I would speak and I wasn't speaking with clarity. And it was oftentimes the other adult in the room who would say, you weren't too clear. And when I realized I needed to start writing on my lesson plan and writing down what I wanted to say, that helped me to gain clarity so that when I would speak with young children, I was succinct and concise, okay? Great ways to help children who roam, but actually all children around expectation. Remember, this is about using as many senses as possible. So my conciseness and my clarity may be supported with a photo of what I want Jamal and the other children to do. Like we said earlier, we all benefit from ample time outdoors. And this might include some boundaries, even when we're outdoors. Our play spaces, how simple and concrete is my play space? Or are there too many choices, or are there too many steps? Too many steps might confuse Jamal, but if it's simple, he's gonna what? Probably lean towards exploring on his own. And then consider, what sensory supports and guides do you have? When children sit down in your large group, do they have carpets to anchor where they should put their bodies? Children who hear too much stimuli, you might have a busy classroom or socialization group. Jamal might benefit from some headphones or some fidget toys, or even some tape that says, this is this play space. Jamal might benefit from an adult or a child who's a play partner, not a dictator if you're the adult, but a play partner. And then think about integrating sensory teaching, like songs and singing, hand puppets that I might use and that Jamal uses. All of these can help him to anchor and not roam so much. Our third consideration for play challenges are children who are anxious. So we define this level of anxiousness as any state of uneasiness or apprehension or even fear that can result from children anticipating a realistic or fantasized threatening event or situation. Because whether real or fantasized, this threatening event or situation can impair their psychological functioning and their physical functioning. All right? So a short version of that is to say, when a child feels that their own safety and well-being is threatened, that's essentially something that can cause anxiousness in young children. Let's meet Jamila. Jamila is 3-year-old and she waits in the window for her baba to get home from work. At her young age, she recognizes his dirty shirt, metaphorically says, "I'm tired and I want to be left alone." While daddy's clean shirt says, "I'm available and accessible." Waiting to see his shirt is nerve-wracking for 3-year-old Jamila. These daily seconds of her in the window are filled with worry. A clean shirt means we can thumb wrestle, while a dirty shirt says, "No book reading with Baba." This anxiety during the day arises even during her school experience. So anxious children might freeze up. They might even throw a tantrum. Anxious children sometimes become aggressive and you don't know why. They can sometimes melt down without warning. Anxious children can cling. They might fear unrealistic situations, like saying, "The window's open, the birds are going to come in through the window, the birds are coming through the window, close the window." They may appear nervous, irritated, or even worried. Nervous, irritated, or even worried. So I'm paying attention to the time, so I'm going to move us past this next breakout room and move us right to reasons children are anxious. So this is not an exhaustive list that you see on the screen. It's just a few reasons that children might become anxious in the early years. We know that when children become anxious, it's really a combination of factors that are biological, physiological, and social. We know that for young children, the anxiety that comes or gets expressed through their play is due to a variety of reasons. Some of these reasons are listed on the screen, but remember, these are only 7. There are many, too many to list on the screen while young children can become anxious. So the one that I did not put there was sometimes they can become anxious because of the adult that they're in this space with. So I'll just give you a moment to think about that it could be you. It could be you that's causing the anxiety in a young child. And that's a hard thing for us to contend with, that it quite possibly could be me, my tone of voice, it could be how I speak, the lack of proximity. We know that adults, the research says that adults who don't get close to children tend to do 2 things. They raise their voices and they talk and move fast. Adults who get close to children, physical proximity, tend to speak softly, slowly, and they tend to show aspects of affection by being close, and they tend to listen to children differently. All conditions that will lessen a child's anxiety. So because we're interventionists, right? We're taking on this title of being an interventionist. This is just a list of intervention strategies that can help secure, because we need to be a secure base, help secure anxious children to engage in play. We've got to get curious. We've got to decide that it's our job, not the mental health consultant who comes once a week, but we're with them 5 days a week to observe consistent anxiety patterns so that we can be able to articulate them and understand them well. That's our role. It's not somebody else's. We've got to support anxious children in their feelings, even ones that we don't understand or we may not feel. And sometimes that's hard for us. The one thing I often tell adults who work with young children is this notion of being with young children. If a child says, "Shawn, did you feel that?" And I say, "No." "Shawn, did you see that?" "No." "Shawn, did you hear that?" "No." I didn't need to see it, hear it, or feel it for it to be real for that 2, 3, or 4, or 5-year-old. I should be saying, "What did you feel? Tell me about it. What did you hear? I'm listening. What did you see?" That's the therapeutic response. And we don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. So this notion of reducing an anxious child's feeling is us being curious in our response as an interventionist. And then this notion of how do we incorporate appropriate affection for anxious children through routines? This isn't always a hug. Most people think it's concerning a hug. Have you all saw those social media videos where the teacher is at the door and the child gets to say, I want a fist pump, I want a high five, I want a hug, I want a wave. They get to make that choice. They're actually demonstrating a different way to be affectionate as a grounding element in the routine, meaning anxious children know what to expect. Mr. Shawn's going to be at the door. He greets us when we walk in the classroom. I get to determine if I want to wave, fist bump, shake his hand, give him a hug, or something else. I get to determine that. That's an anchoring strategy in terms of the routine for young children. My aunt, my father's only sister, when I would spend the night, she had all girls. So when I would spend the night, she used to wake her daughters up saying, I love you, I love you. So the older I got, I would like laugh in my head, like she's still telling them she loves them as a way to wake them up. But it was an anchoring strategy for them. They look forward to it. Literally, I thought it was funny, but they look forward to it as an anchoring strategy that can help young children. We've got to ensure safety and predictability. That example of the teacher at the door, that's predictability. Anxious children need to know what to expect. Being caught off guard could turn into a really bad day for them and for you. And the reality of this anxious children is, as adults, we need this too. If you showed up for work every day and your supervisor or manager or boss waited for you to get to work and then gave you something brand new to do every day, you would have no predictability and you wouldn't feel safe. Most of us would get what? Stressed out. Or I like to say, imagine you applied for a job, but you didn't apply to be a substitute within your program's region. But every day you got a call at 6 a.m. saying, today I need you to go to the San Jose site. Tomorrow I need you to go to the Menlo Park site. Now, could you go up to the Concord site? Today I need you to be in Oakland. Tomorrow I need you to be in what? San Francisco. That might cause a lot of anxiety in you around not just the travel time, but not knowing what to expect. Safety and predictability anchor anxious children. Then we need to give anxious children multiple opportunities to be imaginative in terms of their play. When we allow that space and time, and I say allow because I actually am seeing more and more and more early learning spaces where they'll say, the block area is closed today. The house area is closed today. I'm thinking, whew, those are the two main areas where children thrive that anchor them, but we're shutting them down because we didn't like behavior. So instead of teaching appropriate behavior, we just close the play space. That really hurts anxious children, okay? We've got to make sure that each and every day they have multiple opportunities to anchor themselves in pretend play, because it is a relieving strategy for young children, moving their bodies through space and time. When we're tired as adults, most of us want to sit down, put our feet up. If you're me, you want some Cabernet and some cheesy bread. That's relaxing to me. But to a 3 or 4-year-old, physical movement is relaxing to them, indoors and outdoors. So think of yourself as this interventionist, and which one of these do you need to increase and sustain when you're working with young children, or if you work with and support adults who work with young children? How can you get them to see, to talk about and discuss incorporating these each and every day into the spaces that they share with young children? So some sensory integration strategies. Art is a fantastic way for children to get out what's inside of them. It is not your job to determine that this art is scary, this art is happy, this art is fun, this art feels light. As a medium, it's a way for them to get out what is inside of them. So that means what we need to have is what? Paint, paper, pencils, crayons, markers, glue, clay, a bunch of experiences for them to what? Participate in each and every day. This isn't we have art on Tuesdays and sometimes on Fridays, but I should be able to what? Engage in art every single day. Another sensory integration strategy is having conversations with anxious children. Because anxious children oftentimes don't speak a lot. They oftentimes internalize what's happening. So this isn't this sit down and have a fake therapy session with them, but just to ask them, what do you want to play with when you get outside? We're back inside. But I saw you in the sand, but then I went over and I was helping the kids get things out of the shed. What else did you do after you played in the sand, Shawn? Engage me in conversations to talk about it. And of course, always, always, always getting to my feelings, getting to my feelings. Children who are anxious need adults who help anchor them throughout the day with positive, affirmations, because those affirmations reassure me and lessen my anxiety. And this isn't about giving me the kind of attention to inflate my ego, but it's about acknowledging my actions and efforts when I'm engaged in it. Sometimes it could be verbal. Shawn, I see you're taking your time and you're painting a picture. When you finish, I'm going to come back so you can talk to me about it. That's a reassuring affirmation, or it could be just a thumbs up from across the room. So it could be verbal, it could be paraverbal, right? That paraverbal is not what I say, but how I say it. And this notion of affection, we talked about it earlier. Don't you realize that the emerging research continually says that when adults eat with children, because what we find is the younger children are, adults actually don't sit with them. They put young children in high chairs and they continue to cook. They put the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old at the table and they do something else. But if we eat together, that's a way to demonstrate affection. And then we find if we engage in conversation and tell silly stories, these are all ways that young children can experience affection. So this isn't just a hug and a kiss. This affection that we're talking about is expansive. And of course, we come back to this safety and predictability. Safety and predictability. This is us modeling it. So we're not telling children, but we're modeling it through our behavior, ways that we can be safe and predictable. And this 6th sensory integration strategy is multiple and ongoing opportunities for social dramatic play, for children to get out what they took inside. I was in the classroom in Oakland once observing, and the little girl had the block pretending it was a phone, and she had the other little girl sitting down in front of her, and she was pretending to do her hair. But while she was pretending to do her hair, she was on the phone repeating verbatim everything she heard her mother say to someone about her father. So myself and the teacher were looking at each other like, ooh, this is a loaded conversation. But I knew that social dramatic play experience was allowing her to get out what she took inside. That is that therapeutic milieu that happens when we allow ample space and time for that to happen without judgment, without us shutting it down, or without us making a big deal about it. Because oftentimes we make a big deal about it, then it starts to cycle where for many young children, not all, just being able to get it out is relief. Our 4th play challenge is children who are detached. These are children who oftentimes in early learning settings want to be by themselves. They're unconnected and separate from the other children. We often see detached children. They prefer solitary activities. They prefer playing alone. They will resist help from you as the adult. These children oftentimes seem invisible. They're the children who you have to think, did Shawn come to school today? And you have to ask someone else. Those are the detached children. And what we find is they sometimes don't present a challenge in the beginning, but over time, what we see is the behavior begins to shift and it presents a challenge because these children get stuck in being in their own world all the time. Let's meet Joshua. Daily, Joshua shows up at school and returns home unnoticed. I'll say that again. Daily, Joshua shows up at school and returns home almost unnoticed. Joshua does most things quietly, often engaging in solitary play. Other children surround Joshua, but do not pay attention to him. Joshua plays alone at school and home. While he does not cause traditional trouble, his play behavior is problematic. Children learn by interacting with one another. This is why it's problematic. So we need to watch Joshua in terms of his detached play behavior. If Joshua continually avoids interactions with other children throughout the month of April, I would find that concerning. If Joshua starts to demonstrate an uncomfortable or even stoic disposition, I would continue to watch that and have curious conversations with other adults in his life. If Joshua continues to send messages that he wants to be alone, I'm going to pay attention to that. If Joshua begins to show what we call less age-appropriate social interactions, we might notice Joshua engaging in what? Less conversation, keeping to himself. He might even hesitate during small group and large group activities by turning down multiple play opportunities with other children. Yeah. Here are some reasons that children might show up detached. Joshua could just be irritated, fatigued, and hungry. Those are easy to remedy, right? If I'm hungry, you have to feed me. If I'm fatigued, I need rest. Oops. Sorry about that. Children who often show up in early learning settings as detached often have limited social skills and many times limited communication skills because they've only played by themselves. Children who are detached oftentimes want control of the environment. Playing with other children, I lose or have to share that control. As the adult, we need to pay attention to this because then we really want to give Joshua many opportunities to share control so he doesn't have 100% control by only playing with himself in early learning settings. I always want to play by myself. I don't want to play with anybody else, just by myself. I have full control. If I have to play with Leah, I have to share with Leah. Even if Leah is the less competent play partner, I still have to share some aspects of control. Why did I just hit the next screen? Sometimes naturally shy temperament children become detached. So pay attention to their temperament, their rhythm, and their hum. And your temperament and your personality are not the same. Sometimes we collapse them on top of each other, but First Five has archived on their YouTube page a presentation on temperament in early childhood. So if you don't have a lot of base around temperament, again, I encourage you to go back and watch the presentation on temperament. I think it was offered last year. Because children who are detached are used to playing alone, it's easy for them to move away from other children in the group. We've got to pay attention to this as an interventionist, because as an interventionist, we've got to create interventions that work. You all knew this one was coming. The number one strategy for children who are detached is for adults to anchor them and engage with them, to move them away from being by themselves, model play behaviors, largely in small groups. So I may not just pick Joshua, I might pick Joshua, Jamila, and Jamal in my play group, right? With some specific things that I have all of them to do so that Joshua really gets used to being by children and around children. So I may start with something that they all do beside each other, and then I'm going to build on that where they need each other to move forward. We call that pairing, and that's one of the sensory integration strategies, which is the next consideration as an interventionist. Pairing a detached child like Joshua with a child who has more verbal skills and more social skills. But to do that, I need to know who the other children are. I need to know who the other children are. Here's a big question about Joshua that we all should be able to answer at some point. What are Joshua's social and play strengths? Because those are the things that we're going to anchor and build on. If I can't answer that, then I need to start observing Joshua to figure out what are his social and play strengths. But he's detached. So guess what? You might not have a long list. You might have one or two. You might have one or two. And that could be if I invite Joshua to the table with other children or to the carpet with 3 other children, he comes. That's a strength. I've got to note that as a strength, okay? The other one is when I observe, I've got to figure out, here's the learning list for us. Most adults don't really know what pro-social behaviors are. We don't. I'm laughing because most of us weren't taught them, but we're expected to teach other children. So here's what a pro-social behavior looks like. I'm moving from one end of the room to the other, and Leah bumps into me. But instead of me pushing Leah and saying, Leah, you bumped into me, I say, oh, Leah, I'm sorry. And then I see, oh, her stuff fell. Let me help you pick it up, Leah. Those are 2 pro-social behaviors. She bumped me. I didn't feel the need to push back. I said, oh, Leah, I'm sorry. And then I said, do you need me to help you pick up what you dropped? We've got to teach children those behaviors as expectations and model them every opportunity. And we can't wait for teachable moments because people will say, oh, I get it, Shawn. Those are teachable moments. If something falls, no, we need to do it in small groups, in large group, to kind of map children's brains for, oh, if and when this happens, I have something to build on. Don't wait for it to happen. You've got to do it before it happens multiple times, okay? And there are lots of great books that teach pro-social behaviors in the early childhood years. One set that I really, really like is Sherry Miner's books on just different play behaviors and the way young children are together in a preschool environment in their picture book series. And in the back of the series, she actually has all of these questions for adults and teachers to ask children. And I do think the last time I looked, they took the series, which is it's a series of books. And I think now you can get the series of books like digitally also, but I really like that series of books. There are some children's books that I'm challenged by. I think they're written poorly, or they offer a few pages or texts that I think aren't necessarily age appropriate, or they're even weird, or they teach the wrong thing. But her books are I think, one of the ones I personally give a thumbs up to. And I know that most libraries have them. And if your local library doesn't have it, just use their interlibrary loan to get it from another library. And, you know, I always say, if there are any librarians on the call, your children's librarian is your best friend. Get to know them, get to know them. A lot of people don't get to know their children's librarians. As a former director of a program in San Francisco, when I got to know all the children's librarians at that main library, which was closest to my site, we got a lot of things free just because I got to know them. They would often say, we have some extra money, Shawn. Any books you think we should buy for children? And I would say, oh, I have a long list. And I would pull out my sheet and say, well, I'm going to save this $600 from our budget because they're going to buy these books I want. And they would buy them and then say, we've got those books. Do you want us to bring them on the bookmobile? So just get to know your children's librarian as an additional resource. Then, of course, help me grow. It's I'm gonna type her name in the chat, Jennifer. Sherry Miner. I think this is how you spell her last name. And then the sensory integration strategies for detached children. Think of group games. These are small group games. I mentioned this earlier, like hot potato and pass the mic, where anxious Joshua doesn't have to be forced immediately to contend with back and forth with another child, but he's in close proximity with them. He's doing the same things that they're doing in a non-threatening way to build Joshua's capacity. And then think of opportunities for pairing. Many programs have walkie-talkies, or you can make those old-fashioned ones where you put it in a box or a cup and you put string on it and get them to talk to each other. But this back and forth exchange in a fun way encourages turn taking and pairing for detached children. Okay, all of these things aren't us saying Joshua needs a mental health consultant. Through repeated observation, we'll determine if that needs to happen, but that isn't the only thing. We're interventionists also. So our daily interactions are what? Things that we do to help Joshua also. Like Orlando said earlier, but one of the strategies here is engaging families in constant communication around what's working and what's not. And the opposite, families engaging the adults who care for them in socialization group or in center-based or family childcare, what's working and what's not working, so that we can all act as models or guides for the short term and the long term. Cleaning up experiences for detached children. Let's move the big box together. Shawn, you hold the basket and I'll put all the objects in it. Shawn's a detached child. Okay, today, Joshua, you hold the basket and I'm going to put everything in it. These small experiences that we build on. So we do them over and over and over because children need to build what? Competency and capability. And the only way we do that is by doing multiple things over and over to build our core capacity. And then think of a child like Joshua as having leadership roles and responsibilities. Something as familiar as Simon Says. Joshua becomes the child who says, what? Simon says, jump. Simon says, hop on one foot, step backwards. Joshua takes the lead. Small ways to move him from detachment to engage with others, to reduce and eliminate this becoming a serious behavior challenge. So our fifth one today is children who are rejected, which is probably the most serious one that we often see children who move up the continuum and then need a lot of support if the adults around them don't do anything about them being rejected. These are simply children who refuse to consider or accept what? Being into play. These are children who are denied play entry by their peers. This notion of social rejection, it is a play challenge, and it will cause serious challenging behaviors if we're not paying attention to it and responding to it as adults. We notice that rejected children in the early years start to demonstrate bossy behavior, aggressive behavior, obnoxious behavior. They even become unpredictable and volatile in their behaviors. Rejection causes a serious social behavior challenge for young children. We often know that young children who are rejected repeatedly start to develop trouble reading social cues. What other group of children oftentimes have trouble reading social cues? Children on the autism spectrum. We got to pay attention to this and respond. Remember, we're all interventionists. We're all interventionists. Children who are rejected, we find oftentimes become aggressive. They end up hitting, slapping, or even teasing and name calling other children. They oftentimes will result in acting immaturely, even though they've developed some capacity. They kind of take a step back. They oftentimes develop this lack of sensitivity to others' needs. Yeah. We'll find that in your room or your space, they move from one activity to the other. They may even start to demonstrate what we call odd play behavior. They may start to hit and toss toys for no reason. These children, you might experience them expressing emotions inappropriately. You might see or hear the child growling, huffing and puffing, stomping and walking off, or even crying excessively. So let's meet Julia. Julia is 4 years old and she has a language delay. She often hits to communicate. This has caused children to avoid and reject her during play. Julia often demonstrates aggressive behavior. Julia's hostile behavior has caused children to avoid her during play. They don't want to get hit. They avoid her during meal times and even group times. They're kind of just tired of being, hit by Julia. So if we had a longer time, we would have went into the breakout room. So let's look at some reasons that children like Julia are rejected. They demonstrate ongoing unpredictability during play. We're playing with the blocks and I think we're building, and then Julia busts me upside the head with the block. We're painting and all of a sudden the paint goes from the paper to the table or to me. They're unpredictable during play. Rejected children over time start to lie and brag about things that aren't true because they what? Want attention. Rejected children start to tattle on other children around them as a way to get attention. We see that rejected children quickly become bossy and controlling because they feel like they have no control over their social environments because they've been rejected. And these last two are really, they're all crucial, but rejected children are sometimes rejected because of differences. These are differences that the adults have never named, talked about, or discussed with young children. So if you think of anti-bias education that says we honor similarities and differences equally, we don't just honor things that make us feel comfortable, we honor things that say this is some discomfort, and the only way to deal with the discomfort is to talk about it. Very similar to differences and similarities here, and to prevent children from being rejected. We also find that children who are rejected in early learning settings, more than half of them demonstrate social skills that develop slowly. So I'm in the preschool room and all the children have seemed to develop this skill that I still have not developed around social skills. It could be just waiting my turn, waiting in line, getting a partner to go outside. So Ms. Doreen Revisa, who teaches in the San Jose Unified Preschool Program, one of the things that she does in her classroom is at the end of circle, they go outside. But what she told the kids, she talked to them about the differences. She said, I see some of you every day, you're only playing with the same two friends. I want us all to learn how to play with each other. So one of the first things she did was she started talking about, we're going to all demonstrate friendliness as an expectation to each other, right? She didn't say you have to play with them, but we're going to demonstrate friendliness. And one of the ways that they demonstrate friendliness is every day she honors children by calling someone's name, and you have to pick one partner. You get up, you hold their hand, and you walk outside. They don't have to stand in line because they're outside. When you open the door, they're in the yard. And the children know I have to pick a different person because Ms. Revisa is paying attention. The other implicit part here, so no one gets rejected, everybody gets picked, and everyone has their name called every day. So the teacher might call my name, but then I get to pick Catherine. So Catherine feels picked and honored and not rejected. And then the next day she might call Catherine's name, and then Catherine might pick Leah. Catherine feels what? Honored. Leah feels honored. Nobody's rejected. So she's actively working on their social skills of how to pick a partner to just hold their hand and walk outside. And when I talked to her later in the year, I said, did you notice anything? She said, I noticed that children who would have never started talking to other children actually started talking to them, learned their names, used their names, and would say things like, so-and-so isn't here today. So all of those social skills that she wanted them to develop, she started by saying, I see friends playing with the same two people every day, and I want you all to pick other people to play with sometimes, and we're going to start that by you picking a play partner to just walk outside with. I think it was fantastic personally. To me, that was her acting as an active interventionist. Okay? So what we see on the screen here are 4 interventionist strategies. Miss Revisa, she would love that I called her doctor, did this second one. She communicated directly, not just with the rejected children, But she did the third one. She taught rejected children problem-solving skills, and she used the fourth one. She used the group time to readjust, to address rejection in other children. That's exactly what she did. She was acting as an interventionist and saying, this is the time, we're going to talk about it, and this is our response. And the children followed her lead. So community sports are sports that have no loser or no winner. So children who are rejected benefit from being with their play partners because we're all participating. Things like kickball, we're just kicking the ball. Scavenger hunts, where we're looking for types of rocks. When we're outside, we're looking for these things in nature. We're playing the telephone game, where we're all passing the message. Or freeze dance, where we're stopping and starting music. Children get to pick what kind of music or an appropriate song. There's no winner, there's no loser. Nobody is rejected. Then this notion of dependence experiences. So Catherine's my teacher. She gives Leah and I a puzzle because Shawn is often rejected and Leah isn't, but she gives Leah some of the pieces and she gives Shawn some of the pieces. We have to depend on each other to put the puzzle together. That's what we call a dependence experience, where we have to put our materials together to get or achieve our goal. This notion of teaching, anticipating consequences in teaching children to notice. Oftentimes in early learning spaces, we do this by saying during large group time, we give children 1 or 2 roles. And these are usually social problems that the children have experienced, all right? And we're activating their thinking around what do I do when this happens before it happens, right? So if we have children who are pushing or children who are rejected, we're going to talk to them around, here's what I saw. What can we do if this happens again? And get the feedback from the children. Then we want children to notice, when you were all at the sandbox, I saw 5 children playing, but we said 7 children can play in the sandbox. I saw 3 children just standing and looking. What could you do to help them not just to look? Then children can say, I can ask them if they want to play. I can say there are more shovels over in the shed. They come up with all of those things. Teaching other children to notice is a strategy. Choices. This is exactly what Ms. Ravisa did. She expected friendly behaviors. She talked about it and she taught the expected behavior. And I talked to you earlier about this notion of small grouping with young children. Ooh, okay, we made it to the last slide. I promise you we would juxtapose the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. We see the tantrum is inside the red circle. The meltdown is inside the purple circle. Pay attention to this rectangle in the middle that says, these are some of the things we might experience as adults coming from children who have tantrums and children who have meltdowns. But there are some fundamental differences if you read what's in the red circle and compare it to what's in the purple circle. There are some warning signs that I've included under. Here's the example I like to use for the meltdown experience. The tantrum experience is simply, I want something from the adult, they won't give it to me, and I'm having a tantrum. I'm actually in control. I'll say it again. I want something, I'm not getting it, I am in control, and I end up having a tantrum. I actually see more adults having tantrums lately than I do children in our modern society. I do. The meltdown is fundamentally different. Here, children are overwhelmed and they're not in control. Imagine, I use this example all the time, filling a small water pitcher. Children who are having a tantrum can control the flow of the water. They know when to shut it off and when to fill it to the line. They're in control. Children who are in meltdown state, the water flow is too strong and too fast, and the pitcher overflows, meaning the water comes out of the pitcher before they can turn it off. That's essentially the difference between the tantrum and the meltdown experience for children. Here's some things that we can do when children are in the meltdown experience. We can lower our bodies and our eyes. We want to get at or below the child. This is crucial so that they can see and hear what we're saying in a small, still voice. We want to speak in short sentences. Listen, I've been changed the cadence of my voice. We don't want to ask questions. We simply want to reassure them. We don't want to ask questions, children who are in the meltdown state. We just want to reassure them. We want to slow our speech rates, slow our movements, and be really slow about what we're trying to convey. This takes time. It won't happen just like that. Here's a big crucial point concerning children in the meltdown state. Don't start to intervene unless you are prepared to stay. So you can't help me at the beginning of my meltdown and then run away. You've got to stay there with me until I've connected back to what? Calm. Too often adults will start the process with children and they're busy and they leave the children alone. Guess what happens? They spiral right back up again. Once children are calm, you've used some relaxation strategies, which oftentimes are breathing. Maybe you're giving them a gentle rub or touch on their shoulder or their back. Maybe you're using one of those relaxation calming bottles. After that, and you see the child is connected to calm, let the child talk and you listen. I'll say that again. Let the child talk and you listen. This isn't about you being in fix-it mode, about how to never have a tantrum again. That's not what this is about. Here's what I find. As adults, we need to often, before we intervene, take a deep cleansing breath so that we can connect to calm first, so that we're actually practicing and integrating what it is we want to teach. So in short, those are the steps to help children who are in meltdown state. Children who are in tantrum state, this is about putting feelings into words. So you can say, you're feeling something. Can you tell me what you're feeling? Of course, we still want to get on their level, maybe offer a hug, hold their hand or a back rub. We still might need to offer and give some space for them to express their feelings. Music might even work, or some contracting and releasing, pushing a wall or squeezing a pillow. Because remember, I'm in control, so I can connect to calm easier than the child who's in what? Meltdown state. In tantrum state, I can control the flow of the water. In meltdown state, the water is rushing too fast for me to control. And lastly, Leah provided with the link some handouts. The first handout is just 5 types of play for your, it's a 1-pager. The second handout is kind of ages and stages of the developmental play, children from birth to age 6. The third handout is why young children need to play. And the fourth handout is just a play checklist for you to go over around, thinking of a particular child and going through it, not as a test, but simply to say, I'm noticing some things about this child's play. Let me pay attention more so that I can intervene more clearly and accurately, or maybe I need to watch. I did this checklist, so maybe I need to watch Shawn this week to see some of the things that I'm thinking. Let me really get a lot of data to convince myself that I'm actually seeing this, and it's an actual behavior and not an impression that I've made up. All right, so those 4 handouts should help you as you continue to pay attention to children, to remedy and lessen these 5 play challenges so that they don't become big, challenging behaviors. We made it, Leah. We made it, Catherine. With 4 minutes to spare. Questions, thoughts? Helen says the juxtaposition is really enlightening. Now I see the similarities and differences. Yeah, there are, because so many of us oftentimes, Helen, will respond to what we see as challenging behaviors from young children the same way for a tantrum and a meltdown. So imagine responding to a meltdown the same way you would respond to a tantrum. You're not going to get the right results for that child. You're actually not helping them in the way that they really need help and support. So understanding, and we oftentimes will confuse ourselves because we'll think, well, I'm seeing the same behaviors, and then we collapse tantrum and meltdown on top of each other and make them the same, which says they come from the same place. And then if we say that they come from the same place, and then we make our response the same, what ends up happening is this kind of percolate up begins to happen for children who don't experience what? Feeling and being supported. Okay, I think I found her website. So I just put Sherry's website in the chat. That's a good place, and you can figure out where to go from there. Because I thought it was one publisher that was selling their books, and then when I just Googled it, a whole different publisher showed up. So she could have switched publishers, but I think they're great books. They're great. When I was a mental health consultant, I started using them, and then she just continually created more and more and more. And I use them as jumping off points, just as visuals for children around reducing and eliminating play behaviors that are challenging. I don't stay there though. Those become the jumping off points for children and adults. And I just think she's done a great job in terms of, I appreciate the art, I appreciate the text, and a grounding place so that children can visually move from where they are to gaining some concrete skills.
I think we have some questions, Shawn. I think Mr. Butler had his hand up, and then Orlando as well.
Okay, where are the questions, Catherine? I see a thank you for this behavior every day as a moon supervisor for children playing at lunch. Okay.
Yeah, that was one part of the thing. Also, I do literacy tutoring. And
Okay.
I think you had answered my question. I put my hand up, but as you start talking more, you kind of answered my question.
Okay.
And I I just wanted to ask you, I put my email in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So that book you were talking about, if you can email me the information on it so I can get it, because I think it'll help me further my experience dealing with kids with behaviors, because everything you speak on, I deal with it on a daily basis with the children I work with here at my school.
Okay.
And I mean, the more information I have, the better I can work with the children here at the school.
Eric,
So thank you.
I tried to scroll up. I think I missed it. I just put my email in there. If you email me,
hold on.
I'll email it right back to you. It's Shawn
Okay.
at YesToECE. It's in the chat. I think you put yours here, so it moved ways. So I just put there. So just copy it, email me, and I'll get that that PDF right out to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, this Orlando, I was going to echo the same thing what the brother said. Shawn, you do a great job. Your presentation is smooth, it's educational, but I recommend to see if you can do an audio book for those that want to continue to listen to your word of wisdom, and just the staff in your team, how y'all present it. Y'all do a great job, but I recommend an audio because your visual talking is very helpful for our older folks.
Thank you, Orlando. Appreciate that. We'll definitely take that into consideration. Catherine is always looking to do new and innovative things, so who knows? I appreciate you all for coming and staying for part 2 and really being open to seeing and understanding what we call challenging behaviors through a different lens, and recognizing that these behaviors that we call challenging just don't show up. That young children don't wake up thinking, I want to ruin Leah's day. We may think that, but that's not how they wake up. They're waking up and they're contending with their lived experiences and their lived experiences end up being challenging for us when they're ultimately just trying to get their needs met as a 2-year-old, as a 4-year-old, or as a 7-year-old. And sometimes getting that need met, they can't articulate it clearly. They can't do it accurately, so they're doing it through their behavior. So if we can understand that the behavior has deep meaning and that it's coming from somewhere before it becomes challenging, if we think of ourselves as interventionists and remove ourselves from that space of this is someone else's job, which is hard. So the work is all us. It's hard. It took me years to get from Marcus was responsible for this, for me to realize I was responsible for what I brought into the classroom and that Marcus was responsible for what he got from me. I had taught for years before I was able to shift that, whoa, this was me. I couldn't blame his mother and father. I had to own up to the fact that what I was allowing from me to him and those peers, I was fully responsible for, and that I could do some things to change challenging behavior. It changed the game for me because I showed up differently, and they ended up telling me through their behavior, we're going to show up differently. So definitely, but it requires a deeper dive, and it requires us kind of reframing this old notion of challenging behavior and saying, wait a minute, if I take a deep dive, this is coming from somewhere else, and that I have some responsibility in supporting all children in developing to whole young children.
Thank you again, Shawn, for a wonderful presentation, and thank you all for joining us today. Again, we will be posting our the handouts, and the materials are in the chat for your review, and you'll be receiving an evaluation. So we do appreciate all the feedback, and you could put that space, that part in there, Orlando, about your suggestion into that as well. So we really appreciate everybody's engagement here and your participation. So look forward to upcoming trainings. You folks have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay well.